welcome to The Sharpening. I am your host, Josh Peck. We have a very important episode for you today. The reason it is so important is not only because it involves the mistreatment of an individual by our own government, but because what has happened could conceivably happen to any one of us. Now, I don't say this to try and scare you, but to inform you, so we all can do our best to be prepared for the days ahead. We are going to be talking about things today that aren't covered in the mainstream media. Now, I'm sure it's no great secret that there is at least a certain level of corruption that invades our government. However, just how deep that corruption goes and how it actually affects each and every one of us in our day-to-day lives is utterly astounding when fully realized. Most of you listening are probably familiar with Dr. Kent Hovind, or at least have heard his name. Of course, controversy has surrounded Dr. Hovind since he was convicted and imprisoned in 2007. This episode is designed to look at the case and everything that has happened during the past 8 years. First, we will hear from Dr. Kent Hovind himself, and later we will hear from John Holler, a lawyer with a master's in criminology and a degree in law from Indiana State's School of Law. John will use his legal expertise to help us understand all of the legalities surrounding Dr. Hovind's situation, as well as provide an outside perspective. For those who might be unaware, Dr. Kent Hovind is a prominent creation science speaker, debater, and evangelist. On July 19, 2007, Dr. Hovind was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison for tax-related charges. This episode is dedicated to getting at the real truth of this conviction. I spoke with Dr. Hovind recently about his conviction and arrest. In this section, Dr. Hovind tells the entire story from his perspective, as well as what is in store for the future. He also gives information on how to get involved if you are inclined to do so. Keep in mind, while listening to this, the phone call is from Dr. Hovind in prison, so the audio quality is not spectacular. Also, from time to time, a recording from the sheriff's office will play during the phone call. I have done my best to improve the sound quality, but in situations such as these, only so much can be done. However, you should not have too much trouble being able to understand what is being discussed. After the phone call with Dr. Hovind is finished playing, we will hear from John Holler. So all that being said, here is my interview with Dr. Kent Hovind.
Hello, Kent Hovind calling in. Is this Josh?
Yes, it is. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yes, sir.
Oh, great. I can hear you as well. That helps the conversation, doesn't it?
Well, it's a little noisy where I'm at. Some of these guys don't have any manners, but that's okay. I'll try to talk right into the speaker here, into the mic. Yes, sir. How can I help you, Josh?
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to call me, and it's really good to hear your voice.
Well, thank you, sir. I'm about ready to get out of here. I tell you what, 8 years and 3 weeks now. For absolutely nothing. For nothing. Yeah,
wow, yeah, I can only imagine how frustrating that's got to be. So I know you're not familiar with me, so I figure I could introduce myself a little bit. My name's Josh Peck. I've been heavily influenced by your work. You were actually I was born and raised in the Baptist church, but kind of lost my passion for it. But somebody in my early adult years gave me some of your DVDs, and that really helped kind of make me fall in love with it again. So now, stemming from that, I'm a Bible researcher, author, show host, a whole bunch of other things that God's got me doing, and a father and a husband. So that's a lot of fun too. That's basically, yeah, that's basically that's the short of who I am.
All right. Well, spread those videos around while I can, because they sure have changed a lot of lives. It's not because it's me. It's the material, and it just steers people to God's Word and gives them confidence. And man, this is the Bible. This is God's Word. You know, it's amazing, the testimonies. Those simple DVDs on creation. Yeah, if you know anybody that hasn't seen them, most of them are up on YouTube, or they can go to drdino.com, DRDINO.com, and watch them there. And we've always encouraged people to copy them and give them to their friends. Just don't sell them. You know, the Bible says the laborer is worthy of his hire. Don't edit them, don't change them, and don't sell them. Otherwise, make all the copies you want.
Awesome.
We know of about 3 million copies out there in 40-some languages, and there are probably many more. One guy in Texas, I think, has the record. He's made 41,000 copies now.
Wow.
and giving them out. So if you want to break that, go for it. Please do.
I will do my best.
Okay.
So I am not at all a legal expert by any means, and I've tried to look at the case. I'm having a friend of mine who actually you might remember. He remembers you. His name is John Holler from Ohio.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. He's. I'm talking with him tomorrow to kind of help guide me through some of the legalities and everything, because it's so. I'm sure you're aware it's so convoluted. I was hoping. Would I be able to ask what like just the cut and dry of the case? What happened? What's the deal?
Well, I have been in prison for 8 years and 3 weeks. It was an IRS case against our church ministry. They came after me personally after apparently about a 9-year investigation. There's no telling how much money they spent trying to find something to shut me up, put me in prison. This was back in 2006. My wife and I, for about 10 years, we had gotten letters every once in a while from the IRS saying, please send money. And I always answered and said, excuse me, what do you want exactly? What law? Please explain to me. I want to obey the law. I'm not a tax protester, though I'm glad for those kind of guys. I mean, they started this country 200 years ago. Drew the tea in the harbor, started a big war. That's not me. I have a different ministry. I want to preach the gospel and win souls. But as I read the law, I tried so hard to obey it. I sent letters to back to the IRS. I said, please tell me what I'm doing wrong, exactly what you want. They never responded. Never one time got a letter back ever. And they admitted so on the witness stand at my trial. They said, oh, no, we didn't think we had to answer. There's an IRS booklet called Booklet 517 that says if you have any questions, contact a CPA, a tax attorney, and an IRS enrolled agent. So I contacted each of them, said, how much do you charge to look over what I'm doing, my ministry, and evaluated. They said $50, I think, if I recall. Maybe one was $100. I don't know. So I paid them the money, and they each wrote about a 10 or 12-page letter saying, okay, here's what we looked at your ministry, and this is the result. You don't owe anything, and you're not doing anything wrong, basically. So I sent all that to the IRS, copies of everything, said, okay, this is what they're telling me. If I don't hear from you in 30 days, I will presume I'm being instructed correctly, and, goodbye. Well, months went by, never heard a word. And then I'd get another letter. So I'd send them another response. The letters are always unsigned. It was interesting. I'd get an unsigned letter from the IRS computer. So I would respond saying, look, what do you want? I'm trying to obey the law. This is what the law clearly says. People can read about the frustration and all that if they go to the website 2peter3.com, the number 2, the word Peter, and the number 3, and go to the court documents section. In 2005, I filed an affidavit with the grand jury, and it spells out all the laws that I was relying on from their code, saying, look, this code says if you're ordained minister, you don't have to do this and this and this. So I was trying so hard to obey the law. Well, never heard a word. All of a sudden, the SWAT team zooms in on my house, July 13th, 2006. Well, first they came 2000.
This call is from the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office.
Kicked everybody off the property, interrogated us, and then took all the money out of the church safe. We were saving up to buy another property next door. We had $42,000 something in there. They took all the money and said, oh, this is evidence of a crime. We'll give it back after trial. Well, instead they made up a civil tax bill for the exact same amount to the penny and just applied it to evidence of a crime. That's still not over, by the way. There's some guys, real high-profile guys, investigating all that, and there could be some heads roll over that theft back in 2004. But anyway, they took all the records of the church, took my desk calendar. I didn't even know where I was preaching in 2 weeks. It was awful. At the time, I was traveling and preaching all over the world, preaching about 900 times a year, all over the place, and just doing my seminars on creation versus evolution and dinosaurs in the Bible. Well, then we didn't hear anything, and 2 years later, they came swarming into the property again, and I was getting ready for staff devotions about 7 or 7:30 in the morning, and my wife had finally fallen asleep at 3 o'clock. She broke her tailbone years ago and just had lots of pain and couldn't go to sleep, and so finally she gets to sleep at 3. They surround her bed with, armed agents and get out of bed, wouldn't let her get dressed, wouldn't let her put a robe on, wouldn't let her go to the bathroom. Took her down, handcuffed her, took her downtown in the squad car in her nightgown to the federal courthouse. She's 5 feet tall. She's 110 pounds. She's a grandma. Wouldn't hurt a flea. Absolutely the sweetest lady you'd ever want to meet in the world. Absolutely terrorized her, which is what they want. That's what Gestapo always does it that way. So does the KGB. And America's headed that way unless people put a stop to this. We've got to get Congress to completely investigate this case from start to finish.
Yeah.
It seems to all be the work. There's a couple of key IRS agents that seem to have a vendetta of some kind. I don't know, but Scott Schneider is one, and Chuck Evans and a couple others. It just, for whatever reason, they have got a bullseye on me. And so I've answered every letter I've ever gotten from them, and I've never gotten a response. So anyway, they hauled us down to the courthouse and say you're going to be indicted for structuring. Well, I had no clue what that was. I'd never heard of it before. What on earth? What did I do? And so the bottom line is, they said, well, over a period of years, you took money out of your bank in amounts less than $10,000. Okay, and that's a crime. That's a crime. Congress and its that's what I'm in prison for. Congress, in its great wisdom, wanted to catch drug dealers, and drug dealers were using cash to get drugs. Apparently, I've never taken any drugs. I've never tasted any alcohol in my life. I'll be 62 in a couple of weeks. And so in their wisdom, Congress said, okay, we want the banks to fill out a form if anybody takes out or deposits more than $10,000 in one day. And so the drug dealers said, well, we'll fix them. We'll go take out $9,000 in the morning and $9,000 in the afternoon. Ha, ha, ha. So Congress modified that, I think, was stupid structuring law and said, okay, if they take out 2 or more transactions in one day that total over 10, but each transaction is less than 10, then they have structured transactions to avoid the reporting requirement. Okay, well, I don't care what form the bank fills out. They can fill out a form for every penny. None of our money comes from any drugs. None of it goes to any drugs. It's all our ministry money. Leave us alone. What do you want?
Yeah.
And so over a period of years, we were slowly buying up houses and land in the neighborhood to be able to expand the ministry. It's an older neighborhood built in the 30s and 40s, and so every house was pretty bad shape and had to be remodeled extensively. So we hired a bunch of college students that could come whenever they had free time, at their spare time, come over and help. And we'd give one of them $500 or $1,000 and say, go to Home Depot and get shingles for this house or plywood or whatever. So we're remodeling all these places. And so my wife would go to the bank and get cash. It started about $1,000 every couple of weeks, and then grew to $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $7,000 as we got the ministry just was really growing. The pastor of the church had told us, try to keep any withdrawals or deposits under $10,000. I said, why? He said, well, it puts you on the radar. I said, I'm not doing anything wrong. I don't care about their radar. He said, well, I'm the pastor. Just keep it under 10 if you can. All right. Well, 3 or 4 times, I think 4 times, we took out over 10 for some special project, and so the bank fills out their little form. I don't care about their form. And about every 12 days, my wife, we got up to $9,500 every 12 days. And finally, in 2003, I called everybody together and said, hey, hold it, stop. I don't want my wife carrying all this cash. We're going to get some credit cards and put a couple guys in charge of construction and just, So we did. 3 years later, they come arrest both my wife and I for those withdrawals of our own money, of the ministry money, 5 years earlier, because they were less than $10,000. I said, you can't be serious. Oh yeah, we're serious. That's a structuring charge. So we went to trial. After 2 weeks of the government doing their dog and pony show, my attorney said, and my wife's attorney, don't even give a defense. There is no crime. Everybody can see that. You didn't do anything wrong. Just don't even give a defense. So we didn't even give a defense. And then my attorney's reading the jury instructions after trial and says, okay, now, jury, if the law says if you find the Hovinds took out more than $10,000, you have to find them guilty if they structured 2 transactions in one day. So the U.S. attorney, Michelle Heldemeyer, said, I object. To what? This is what the law says. Well, I object. Yeah. Well, the judge went back and changed the jury instructions. And 30, 40 minutes later, she comes out with a new changed instruction, which changes the law. and said, well, if you find they took out less than 10,000, you have to find them guilty. Well, that's like saying the speed limit is 70. If you find they went less than 70, you got to give them a ticket. It is that retarded.
This call is from the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office.
Way off the charts in the retarded section. Anyway,
Yeah.
so of course the jury finds us guilty. Well, each structuring charge carries a five-year sentence. I had 45 times we took money out of our own bank. That could have given me 200 years in prison.
Oh, wow.
Said in their great mercy, they gave me just 10 years in prison, and I've been down 8 now. We were, both my wife and I, found guilty of structuring transactions to avoid a reporting requirement, even though the law says 2 or more transactions in one day, and ours were 1 transaction every 12 days. If this case is not overturned, if you go take $100 out of your bank every week for 2 years, you are now guilty because it went over 10,000. You are now guilty of 100 counts of structuring and can be given 500 years in prison for taking your own money out of your own bank. That's how important this case is.
Wow.
It is to make it worse. They said, okay, you structured this money over all these years, $400 and some thousand. Okay? Now, you owe that money to the government. Like, excuse me? The money is gone. It's up on the roof of the house and in the carpeting and in the hello? It's gone. 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's spent, No,
Yeah.
you owe $430,000. All those structured funds need to be forfeited. Well, that's stupidity number 2. Number 1, I guess, is even bringing a charge like that. There's no structuring involved. Stupidity number 2 would be changing the jury instructions to be sure we're found guilty. Number 3 is saying now you owe that money to the government. Well, they use Title 21 drug laws. Under the drug laws, if a drug dealer is structuring funds, all the money that he structured now is given to the government. It can be forfeited. Okay, there's no drugs in my case. Never have been. It's church money for a church account, for church projects. There's no crime. But
Yeah.
So they said, yep, you owe that money. Well, then the U.S. attorney starts checking around and finds out I don't own anything. I live in a church parsonage. I drive a church van. I took a vow of poverty. Everything belongs to the Lord. I don't own anything. So they come back and put in a motion, Judge, we want to seize the church ministry property. This really isn't a church ministry. This is actually Kent Hovind's personal property. Well, right away the trustee puts in a motion saying, excuse me, that's not his. It belongs to the church ministry. I'm the trustee. Call me if you have any questions. We demand a hearing or a trial on this matter. The jury did not find that property belongs to Kent Hovind. That was not part of this trial. You can't seize church property. Why don't you go seize McDonald's or Walmart? They have more money,
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, so the judge, after 7 months, letting it sit on her desk, no trial, no hearing, ruled, yep, there is no church ministry. That is Kent Hovind's personal property, and you may seize it. So we put in an appeal. The trustee did, I believe. I don't remember how. I was in jail at the time. And the appellate court never overturned anything. And Supreme Court doesn't ever hear anything. They only hear 65 cases out of 11,000 that get submitted. So it doesn't matter how good your issues are. They don't want to hear it. They just don't hear it. So they say, okay, we're going to seize the church property. Well, the one U.S. attorney on my case, John David Roy Atchison, he goes down and seizes the church bank account. And a couple of weeks later, he gets on an airplane, flies to Detroit to have sex with a 5-year-old. They published a whole string of his emails, and the mother was asking, is this going to hurt my daughter? Oh, no, I've done it plenty, he said. He gets off the plane with a bottle of Vaseline and a doll, and they arrest him and put him in jail in Detroit, and he hangs himself. Anybody can Google Atchison from October 5th, 2007. He was one of the U.S. attorneys. He did seize the bank account. Well, it was real quiet for a while. Then all of a sudden they went down and changed the titles on all the properties to say from the Church Ministry Trust to say U.S. government. Meanwhile, I'm being transferred I've been moved 23 times since I've been in prison. They're moving. Geez. They call it diesel therapy. They're moving me all over the countryside for whatever reason. So I'm trying to fight this case in spite of all these incredible moves every time. I've been to New Hampshire, Colorado, South Carolina, Georgia, and all the transfer centers in between, Oklahoma, New York, you name it, I've been there. I know my way around the country in the federal system. Well, so the trustee filed a quiet title action in the county court saying, excuse me, we better check this out. This title is quiet. The government thinks they own it. We think we own it. Quiet this title down. Let's resolve these issues. Well, the federal judge says, no, you move that to my court. Wait a minute. Property issues are decided in the county. The county decides, not the federal government. Who is this federal government anyway? They don't decide property issues. But they did. They moved it to the federal court, and of course the judge ruled, no, that is the government's property. And then she ordered the trustee, don't you file any more liens or lis pendens on this property because the government's going to sell it. Well, I'm up in New Hampshire praying, Lord, what on earth? Help me, Father. Send somebody who understands this.
Yeah.
And the next day, a guy moves into my room who's a legal genius and a real estate agent. He says, well, the case is still going as long as, he said, one of the issues was when they moved me out of South Carolina, they kept my box of all my legal materials for 20 months, a year and a half. I kept writing and calling, where's my stuff? I got to file it. Hello, send my legal files. They didn't do it. Well, there's a motion you can file in court called a 2255. It's just the name of the number of the law that says if your attorney was ineffective and he didn't do certain things right, if you lost your case because of your attorney's stupidity, you can have the case overturned because of his ineffective assistance of counsel. It's called. So, right. But you only got 12 months to file that. The rule says you have 12 months unless the government hinders you some way. Okay, well, keeping my legal box for a year and a half, hello, that hindered me.
Yeah, that would qualify.
Well, you would think, but not with my judge. I filed a motion saying I would like you to hear the 2255. I was hindered because they kept my legal box. Nope, too late. You only had a year.
This call is from the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office.
Did not even hear the 2255 on the merits. Just simply dismissed it as time barred. I filed motion after motion. Of course, I'm a preacher. I'm a science teacher. This legal stuff is so foreign to me. I feel like I've been thrown onto a rugby field and say, here, play ball. I don't understand this game at all.
Yeah.
What are they trying to do out there with their heads all together? I don't know. So I lost everything, of course. I lost every time. And so I filed my buddy says, hey, file a Bivens claim. I said, what is that? He said, well, a guy named Bivens filed a lawsuit years ago, and now everybody calls it a Bivens lawsuit. If the government does something wrong, like them keeping your box for a year and a half, you can sue them and get damages and get the judgment of relief. He said, you need to sue them for money and to get a judgment that says, hey, it is the government's fault that this 2255 was late. That will force them to hear the 2255 on the merits. So we filed a Bivens claim in South Carolina court. And then he says, okay, now that you have a Bivens claim, you can file a lis pendens. I said, what is that? He said, well, that's Latin for litigation is pending. Stop everything, or at least notify somebody before they buy the property, saying, hey, you might want to be aware that there's litigation pending on this property.
Right.
Okay. So a litigation lis pendens simply notifies potential buyers, hey, be cautious. You may not be getting a clear title to this thing. And so now they filed they have started another lawsuit against me, claiming that I violated the judge's order and filed a lis pendens in violation of the judge's order. Well, the judge's order was to the trustee. The judge is the one who said the property belongs to me when it doesn't. So, okay, if you say it belongs to me, then I have a right to file a lis pendens because litigation is still pending. Well, then they're claiming I used the U.S. mail to mail the letter about the litigation pending. And that crime of using the mail to mail a letter is a 20-year sentence.
Oh, geez.
That's what I go to trial for, January 5th, mail fraud. And they could give me 20 years in prison if they can prove I mailed a letter across state lines.
Is that the most recent charges that they've just brought on you?
That's the new charge. They started with just a contempt of court. They said it was contempt of court by filing a lis pendens after the judge ordered the trustee not to. Well, I never got ordered not to. I'm not the trustee. But this judge is bound and determined to make the property mine so that they can seize it, of course. It goes right back to 1 Timothy 6:10. Now, here's what's happening. You can contact Ernie Land in Westville, Florida, or any number of others, legal guys that are working on this. You should probably call him and get him to interview him also. His number is 850-419-0955. 850-419-0955. He can keep you up to speed on what's happening. I'm in the dark here. I don't have any email. Just get phone calls that are very expensive to the recipient, and locked in this room all the time. But what's happening is people realize at the lower level, at this district court level, I'm never going to win. I could put in a motion and say the sky is blue, and they would deny it. Okay,
right.
No, it's not blue. It wouldn't matter what I did. So there's almost no chance of winning this January. They're probably going to beat me and sentence me to 20 years more in prison. Okay. The solution here is a political solution and a public pressure solution. A lot of times in the Bible, you read where politicians did things or didn't do things because they feared the people.
Right.
You see that phrase, feared the people, dozens of times. Okay. There needs to be millions of phone calls to Congress and to media and to say, would you please investigate this case? Look at it from top to bottom. My case is a classic example of everything that can possibly go wrong in the federal system. First of all, in order for the grand jury to indict somebody, there's a whole list of rules that...
This call is from the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office.
They did not follow most of those rules. I wrote 3 times to the grand jury, would you please let me come in and testify before you send an indictment down? Well, there are 2 kinds of grand juries. A regular grand jury that issues an indictment has to let people come in and testify. I tried, they wouldn't let me, so they broke the rule. Then they'll say, well, that was a special grand jury. Okay, special grand juries, A, cannot issue an indictment. They can only issue a report, and they are only for government employees. I am not a government employee.
Right.
So if they're saying it was a special grand jury, okay, then it was illegally convened to get me. I'm not a grand jury. I'm not. Then they're going to say the federal court is. They won't tell the jurors this, but it's an admiralty court. It's like you're out at sea on a boat, and that flag represents admiralty. You are now no longer on the United States, and the Constitution doesn't apply. The judge is now the captain of a ship and can do whatever they want. Under admiralty law, out at sea, the captain can execute somebody if he wants. I mean, they really can. They normally don't, but they could. The judge has 100% authority. But see, they want you to think you're in a real federal court, Article 3, blah, 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 when it's admiralty. There's a whole list of things that are just seriously wrong. Of course, admiralty would only apply if you are enlisted. I'm not enlisted in the military.
Huh.
Anyway, there's I don't want to tip my hand too much of some of the things that I'm going to try to get across to the jury, but they're going to make me swear to tell the whole truth, and then they're going to do every legal trick in the book to prevent me from telling the whole truth.
Right.
Mark my words. Write it down. January 5th, if I was the government, I would simply drop this charge and let me go home. Stop. Leave me alone. I'm not trying to hurt anybody. I didn't start this fight. I was reading my Bible when they came and arrested me for structuring.
Wow.
I said, what on earth? This is bizarre. So one is media pressure, but that's not going to affect these judges at all. The other thing that will, though, is media pressure and phone calls and letters and emails to Congress saying, would you please investigate this? And Ernie can catch you up to speed on that. Congress is finally starting to wake up saying, we have a federal judicial system that is off. We created a monster here. What have we done? Let's rein them in. Judges are appointed to the court for life during good behavior. Okay,
wow.
It is not good behavior to violate the Constitution.
Yeah.
And so all I want is a fair, honest, open investigation. And my prayer has long been that this case will do like Paul's did in Philippians 1. spread the gospel farther. He said, if my bonds spread the gospel farther, well, praise God. As it stands now, they claim I owe them $430,000 for money taken out of the bank over a period of many years to pay church bills.
Wow.
They already seized the bank account, and they already seized the property, and they already sold the property and got their money.
Huh.
There is no loss to the government. The only loss is the incredible amount of money they are wasting on this stupid case.
Yeah, no kidding.
One of the IRS agents spent a fortune to have all the envelopes and letters and everything dusted for fingerprints and analyzed at a forensic laboratory. Somebody, as a matter of fact, a lot of somebodies out there, like you or somebody else, should do a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, FOIA. Anybody can do a FOIA, find out how to do it, it'll be on the internet, and say, how much money have you spent prosecuting this guy? They have to answer that question. They're going to say, well, to answer that, it's going to cost you $50. We got to do a lot of research. Okay, here's $50. Now tell me, how much have you spent? I would guarantee this case, start to finish, has probably cost the government way over $1 million.
Wow.
And for what do they want? This is time for Congress, especially this new Congress, to be inundated with calls, letters, emails saying, look, would you investigate? I have nothing to fear from an investigation. Honest, open investigation. I will come testify before Congress, and I'm praying that I get to do that. When this first happened, I said, Lord, I want this to be national news, and I want the case completely overturned.
Yeah.
And boy, that's still my prayer. So maybe this will work where they bring me in to testify to Congress. There's many simple solutions. One, shut down the IRS. Close it down, okay?
Yeah, I think everybody would be able to get behind that. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm not in that bandwagon, but I'm glad people are, okay? Just shut it down. We don't need that. It's Karl Marx's idea from 1848. Karl Marx said we need a graduated income tax. I'm not a tax protester, and I pay every tax I owe, believe me, and more than I owe. Okay. So I'm not in that group, though I'm glad there are guys out there, but we should shut it down. Two, we should get the federal judges back into working on federal issues. We should shut down the drug war. It's not the federal government's business. Shut it down. Let the states handle that. I could scale the government back to about 5% of its current size. Number three, we should make it against the law for anybody involved in law enforcement to have to be able to own stock in the prison system. Right now, judges and lawyers and everybody involved in the system, they own stock in this thing, and they double dip. The longer they put you in, the more time they give you in prison, the more money they make on the backside.
Oh, geez.
If something isn't seriously wrong with that, I don't know what is. I mean, hello. That ought to be criminal.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right? Sure, I mean, that doesn't take half a brain to figure that out. So that's double dipping for sure. So there's a lot of simple things like that I would be glad to testify to Congress about, saying, look, would you guys wake up, stop this insanity? This is crazy. America has about 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prisoners. We have the largest prison system in the world by far, is what I understand. This is crazy. We lock up about 800 people per 100,000, where European countries lock up about 80 per 100,000.
Wow.
It is just insane. In the Bible, God never called for prisons at all.
Yeah.
You either give them a fine or a beating or execute them. If somebody's a dangerous criminal, well, then execute them. Hello? If somebody rapes your daughter, she doesn't need to pay for his groceries for the next 30 years.
Yeah, no kidding.
She needs to go spit on his grave until you heal up emotionally and then go on with your life. If somebody's given a life sentence, what's his wife supposed to do? What's his family supposed to do? The victims never feel like... if you read when Moses led the people out of Egypt, it's a classic. When they got across the Red Sea, it says they saw the Egyptians' bodies dead on the shore. If that hadn't happened, they would always be worried, wow, Pharaoh's coming after me.
Yeah.
That was the psychological closure. It's done. It's over. They're dead. So God's law is perfect, Psalm 19:7. And in God's perfect law, if you steal something, you pay back 4 times or 7 times, or this all spelled out there. If for certain crimes, you get a beating. I've asked 100 guys in here, if I give you the option, after trial, you're found guilty, and said, okay, you want 5 years in prison or 25 lashes? Every single one said I would take the lashes.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be a whole lot cheaper than feeding them for 5 years, and their family on welfare now for 5 years. If their family stays with them, there's an 85% divorce rate for people that go to prison more than 1 year.
Wow.
This ruins families. You talk about child abuse. It's the government committing child abuse by locking guys away from their families.
Yeah.
Give them a beating, and everybody goes home. It'd be a whole lot cheaper. The problem is it would unemploy a lot of people that are currently working here in the system that are probably unemployable otherwise.
Right.
There's a whole transportation network. People that drive buses and run these transfer centers and haul prisoners around, and there are thousands of people employed in this giant jail and prison system that would be all of a sudden out of work.
This call is from the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office.
Yay, that's the way it ought to be.
Yeah.
Give people a choice, a fine, a beating, or execution. I bet a lot of guys with life sentences, if you said, do you want executed or do you want life sentence? Oh, please, just kill me.
Yeah.
It'd be merciful. It'd be a whole lot cheaper. And it'd be
Yeah,
merciful.
no kidding.
And it'd be scriptural. At least give them the option. When I become king, I'm going to shut the system down or at least scale it back to about 2% of its current size. Those are some practical things that I would do. So anyway, that's where I'm at. I'm waiting for January 5th trial. What people can do is pray, Acts chapter 12, verse 5 style. Pray and let God do some kind of miracle and just stop this, okay?
Absolutely.
Pray that they just drop the charge. If they don't drop the charge, pray that I will be allowed to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Number 3, lobby Congress and news media and say, look, this case needs to be investigated. Start to finish, top to bottom, investigated. Please look into this. It's not my job to judge the judge, but it is Congress's job. Maybe they should look into impeaching any judge that doesn't rule according to the Constitution. They should lose their job. Any IRS agent that violates the law, like I think happened in my case many times, they should be disciplined by their leaders. Part of the reason they even brought this new case is because I have a $25 million tort claim lawsuit against the judge and the U.S. attorney and the IRS agents. I'm suing them.
Yeah.
For what they did wrong. I did an IMF, I'd written at FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. I said, I would like a copy of my individual master file, my IMF. What do you guys have on me anyway? They wrote back and said it would be $140-some. I said, okay, here it is. They sent back this huge stack of papers and said in there, you are an underground coal miner in the Virgin Islands. Excuse me, I've never been to the Virgin Islands, and no, fix that, okay? So they fixed their record. I wrote again and said, I'd like my new individual master file. They sent me a new one, 710 pages, and said, you don't owe any tax, and you're not a tax protester. Yay, thank you. They come and seize that document when they raided the place in 2004. 2006, they present it at trial as evidence that I've caused them a lot of work.
Oh, geez.
I paid $146 for it. I did exactly what the law said. But there's 35 pages in that document. There were 35 pages in there that said I'm not a tax protester and I don't owe any tax. They removed all those pages, presented it at trial as evidence of my guilt when it was actually evidence of my innocence.
Wow.
It's called exculpatory evidence. So if you know any lawyer types that want to help and do some investigation on this, tell them, get a hold of Ernie. We got a whole team of about, quite a few guys that are working different parts of this thing, and we're going to do everything possible legally. 1 Timothy 1:8 says the law is good if you use it lawfully. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay? So please, this needs to go viral, and it needs to be in the next month. Everybody needs to know, because what's happened, because of this case, people think, oh, Hovind's a tax protester, he didn't pay his taxes. That is simply not true. There was no tax loss at all to the government.
Right. Wow.
They're either lying or they're stupid. So please tell everybody and get other programs to let's spread this around like the virus. People need to know, because it'll help people watch my videos and get saved. That's really Satan's goal in all this, is to stop people from watching.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing too. And so what do you think is the overall motivation behind this? I mean, clearly the charges they have from my current understanding, the charges that they're trying to put on you are absolutely ridiculous. What do you think the actual motivation is? Is it just a money grab, or do you think that it might have something to do with your message? Because you were really successful, and still are really successful in teaching people the truth against evolution. Do you think that has anything to do with it?
Well, yes, I think two things. One, they want money, of course. First Timothy 6:10, love of money, root of all evil. They did this hoping to get a bunch of money. But secondly, there's only two options. Either there's a God or there isn't. Right. If there's a God, then he makes the rules. He made the world. He owns it. Okay, and so the creation teaching that I do, which emphasizes the fact, hey, there's a God. You find out what he says and you do it. That is a great threat to these New World Order folks who want to believe in evolution that says, oh, no, there's no God. Government makes the rules. We are God. I cover that in my seminar number 5 about humanism versus creation, And so, yes, my teaching and my scientific evidence and my clearly pointing out in 4th grade style how stupid evolution is a monumental threat to these guys. I mean, it undermines their entire system, because they want a one-world government, a new world order under communism, basically. I say, guys, there are already many communist countries in the world. Don't turn America into another one. If you really want to live under communism, move. I'll help pack. I'll help pay.
Yeah.
Move out of here. Go to one of those countries. I don't want to live in a communist country. And so my teaching is a great threat to those who believe in communism or socialism, or that government ought to rule everything. I love my country. I love my Constitution. I love the law. We need the law. I'm in a room right here with some guys who really need the law,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll tell you this. Of the many thousands of guys I've been locked up with in 8 years, in 3 weeks, of many, many thousands of different guys I have met.
This call is from the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office.
Probably 2 or 3% is all that really need to have, something. If we're going to do prisons, then they should go to prison. Probably should be executed instead. Nearly all of them should go home. This is it's a money-making racket.
Yeah.
So maybe you can do a FOIA request and find out, hey, do these IRS agents or this U.S. attorneys or this judge, do they own stock in the prison system? Are they profiting in any way on the backside? I don't know. Somebody ought to find out.
Yeah, no kidding. Has being in contact with other inmates and stuff, has there been a lot of opportunity for evangelism within the system?
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah, I've led nearly 700 guys to the Lord. We have Bible study 4 times a day in my room. We have seen many lives just radically changed. A lot of the Bible is written from prison. Yeah. A whole lot of the Bible written from prison or captivity or by people who've been to one of those. It's just, I can see why. It makes a whole new perspective. I would not have changed my theology on end times had I not come to prison. I am now post-trib, pre-wrath, and wrote a book about it. It's up on 2peter3.com.
Oh, wow.
We will be here for the tribulation. Get that book, What on Earth is About to Happen. All right. I've got supper coming here, brother. They're going to shut the phone off.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, brother. Right.
Yep. There you have it, in Dr. Kent Hovind's own words. Now to give us an outside perspective and help shed some more light into the legalities of this issue, we will hear from John Holler. A very special thanks goes out to John for providing his time and expertise to help us all wrap our heads around this issue. John is the co-pastor at Fellowship Bible Chapel in Ohio. He's been an elder at a large church for 15 years and has been on the board of Evangelical College and Seminary for 25 years. As a lawyer, John has extensive experience in representing individuals and business clients in complex commercial and business litigation matters involving restrictive covenant and theft of trade secrets, breach of contract claims, securities, finance, lender liability, professional liability, and product liability. So all that being said, here is my interview with John Holler. Hey John, how's it going? You had a chance to hear the recording I did with Kent Hovind. For those who are listening who might not be familiar with you, I was hoping you'd be able to give a little background on your expertise and that kind of stuff, so people have a sense of who's talking.
Sure. Well, excuse me, I graduated from law school in 1980 and began practicing law. I've practiced litigation my entire career. I started out doing mostly product liability, railroad, gas explosion type cases, railroad grade crossing accidents, that sort of thing. But about 10 years into my career, I also defended doctors for many years in medical malpractice cases. But about 10 years into my career, I shifted over to the commercial side of things. And since then, I've been involved in a whole variety of civil cases, trade secrets, breach of covenants not to compete, insurance coverage cases, other type business torts such as fraud in the inducement of contracts. I have also participated in a large securities and mail fraud case, one of the largest in the history of the United States, both on the civil and criminal side. So that's my background. I've been at this for, next month it'll be 35 years since I finished law school. So I guess wow. I've been at it a while.
That's awesome. So you are definitely the guy to talk to about this. And again, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and be able to help us get our heads around that. So you heard the interview, and you said that you were already a little familiar with the case. So what's your opinion? What's going on here?
Well, I met Kent a couple times. Heard him at Stealing the Mind conferences in Vail and Keystone, Colorado back in 1999 and 2000. And I remember, just as an anecdote, I remember that he and I were out on the patio at Keystone in 2000 trying to figure out, we couldn't judge it against anything, but we were trying to see if, when you make a little gun with your rubber band in your finger, if it would fly farther at 9,500 feet above sea level than it would at sea level. So we were out there shooting rubber bands at each other from various distances. So I'm sure he doesn't remember that, but I do remember we were just kind of goofing around during one of the breaks. But I became aware, I was aware that he was convicted. It's hard to believe that it's been about 8.5 years. I think given the way the federal system works, if I recall correctly, if he was sentenced to 10 years, you have to serve about 85% of your sentence before you can be paroled. So if he's been in 8.5 years, he's very close to being paroled. But I understand that there's now a potential new charge that the government has come up with against him concerning a notice of lis pendens that he sent with regard to the property. But my understanding is that he was convicted of structuring. And while I haven't looked at the details of the case, I have listened to the interview. And a few things that he said really resonated with me. First of all was his assertion in there that he has been transferred 22 or 23 times since he's been in the federal prison system. When I was in graduate school, before I started law school, this would have been in the school year of 1976, 1977. I was in a criminology correctional administration program at Indiana State, and I spent 2 semesters interning out at the federal prison, the federal penitentiary in Terre Haute, which at the time was transitioning from a high security to sort of a ultra high security prison, or a sort of a medium security to high security. And that's eventually where the feds located one of 2, I believe, death rows that they have in the federal prison system. That's where Timothy McVeigh the Oklahoma City bomber was put to death a number of years back. So during my time there, I worked in the law library. That was my responsibility to manage that, and got to meet a lot of prisoners who had been transferred many times like Ken. I remember one gentleman who happened to be a lawyer had been transferred, had been in the system for 14 months and had been in 11 different institutions in that time.
Wow.
And it's fairly common for this to be done. The prisoners, I think Kent used the term diesel therapy back in the 70s, almost 40 years ago when I was there. They called it bus therapy. But you get the point. And a lot of times this was done, in the early days, it was done to kind of make it difficult for prisoners to pursue legal remedies through the courts. Now it was also done to keep the federal prisons under court-ordered population guidelines or court-ordered limits on the number of people they could have in a particular institution. And at times there was, a quarter of the entire federal prison population would be considered in transit, being transferred from one institution to another, because prisoners in transit did not count against the court-ordered limit.
Oh, wow.
So, as government does, they just sort of said, well, we'll just have more people in transit then. And so things did, it was the way government very often tries to slice things and get around the real intent of the law. And I think that sort of attitude you see here on the prosecution side with regard to Ken Hovind. What he's accused of is a thing called structuring, or what he was accused and convicted of. Now, let me just say, to lead into this, back in 2011, I think your audience would be interested in getting a book that might help explain what's really going on in the federal criminal justice system today. There was a book published by an author named Harvey Silverglate. The foreword was written by Alan Dershowitz, the famous professor at Harvard. And it's called 3 Felonies a Day, How the Feds Target the Innocent. And it really recounts sort of the nightmare that has been created in the criminal justice system here in America, where the federal, what you can be accused of in federal court on a criminal basis, not just civil, but criminal basis, has exploded to where, it would not be hard for somebody to be accused of 3 felonies a day just going about their normal daily business practice.
Oh, geez.
One of those areas where it has become very problematic is in the area of structuring. And in fact, on October 25th, the New York Times, I don't remember, it appeared on the front page of the New York Times, in connection with the prophecy updates I do for my church. If you want to see them, you can go to YouTube and just type in FB Chapel for Fellowship Bible Chapel, FB Chapel, or my FB Chapel and my name, just all one word. And you can see what I do in terms of prophecy update. But I review a lot of newspapers each day, a lot of newspapers, news magazines, other publications. And on the front page of the New York Times, either on Saturday or Sunday that weekend, they had this article titled, "Law Lets IRS Seize Accounts on Suspicion, No Crime Required." Now, this would be the civil forfeiture side of what Kent was convicted of on the criminal side. So you can be both subject to civil forfeiture and also to criminal forfeiture of your money that you have. It's in your account. It's always been in your account. It's your money. You've earned it legitimately. But for example, one of the articles, one of the people they focused on was a lady around Des Moines, Iowa, who has a Mexican restaurant. It's a very modest, small restaurant. She's sort of the owner, cook, head chef, maitre d'. She does everything there for it. And she received notice one day that the IRS had seized her checking account, her entire checking account, of $33,000. And she could not understand why. Now, if you remember in Kent's interview, he mentioned that the feds had put in a limit that if you engaged in certain transactions over, it was either $9,000 or $10,000 per day, cash transactions, you were subject to a special reporting requirement. Well, to get around it, people started doing, well, I'll just put in $8,000. Well, then they changed it so that you can now be accused if you engage in a lot of cash transactions, the government can just come in and seize all of your money in your checking accounts.
Oh,
and there are instances out there where people have had $300,000 or $400,000 seized and being accused of structuring. Now, the government will always say, well, you just go into court, but you have to go in and you have to meet this crazy burden of proof that you have to establish that you're not doing this to avoid the reporting requirements, that you're not, and it's almost an impossible standard. So, for example, a gentleman who had $400,000 in cash taken, the government has made him a generous offer to settle with him and allow him to get to resolve the issue if he just will agree to let them keep 80% of what they seized.
Oh, geez.
In other words, they took $400,000, he'll get back 80, the government will keep 320. And this is an area of abuse among the government in many, many areas. People who are not drug dealers. This was mainly directed at drug dealers. But government has a tendency to stick its fingers in everywhere. When it gets a foot in the door, then it goes after everything that might fall under that. So people have, there are cities in the country that are notorious for using these civil forfeiture laws to go out and pick up all kinds of assets, trucks, cars, other things, and keep these things and say that, well, this is just, you're engaged in structuring and you have to prove. And that's how some of the prosecutors, some of the police departments finance the purchase of equipment, because that stuff is seized and then it's sold at auction. It's a horribly abusive thing. But this lady, the interesting thing about this lady was she was accused of laundering money or cheating on her taxes by depositing $8,000 a day or $8,000 at a time into her checking account. Now, why did she do that? Well, the government says, well, it's less than $10,000. And so now the banks, they don't look at just $10,000 and above. If you are regularly engaged in transactions under $10,000, the presumption is that you must be trying to avoid the $10,000 reporting requirement, so you get reported anyway. And then the IRS or other federal agencies will come in and just seize the money. Oh, so in this case, the reason the lady deposited $8,000 was that whenever she got $8,000 in her cash-only restaurant, she doesn't even use credit cards. When she got $8,000, she had it deposited because her insurance company would only insure deposits up to $8,000. In other words, people who engage in cash transactions are subject to being robbed when they take the money to the bank. It is a danger. It's the world we live in. Well, her insurance company would only cover deposits. If she had $10,000 and she got robbed, she would only get reimbursed $8,000 from her insurance company.
Jeez, it's an impossible situation.
So in order to keep to keep her deposits in line with what her insurance coverage was, she would deposit $8,000. So the only thing, again, she wasn't accused of money laundering or anything else. It was just because she deposited less than $10,000 at a time, she was trying to avoid a triggering requirement by the government. And this is what the government is doing. So this is what Kent was caught up in. I mean, I think his case was probably more of a novelty at the time that it happened, but I can just tell you that I don't know how it's going on the criminal side of the ledger, but on the civil forfeiture side, the thing is exploding. And all sorts of people and businesses are being subject to this because the government has its hand in the banks. And so the banks, they would come to an attorney like me. I represent a lot of financial institutions, and they would say, what should we do? How do we avoid being held responsible under these laws on these reporting requirements? And I'm sure that what most attorneys would do is they would say, well, then you need to go and you need to make sure that when somebody has a series of transactions under $10,000, you need to report it to the federal government, which the bank does. And then the government just presumes that you're guilty, and you have to prove that you should be entitled to the money back. Now, look, this is just yet another, and it's not just the IRS, but it's usually the IRS. And this is what the IRS is doing in many, many cases. In fact, in the case in Iowa, what the IRS, the chief of criminal investigation of the IRS did give a written statement to the New York Times, and he said this: this policy update will ensure that criminal investigation continues to focus our limited investigative resources on identifying and investigating violations within our jurisdiction that closely align with the criminal investigation unit's mission and key priorities. He added that making deposits under $10,000 to evade reporting requirements called structuring is still a crime, whether the money is from legal or illegal sources. The new policy will not apply to past users. So, look, so they're saying, well, what happened here is the IRS has been caught doing yet another thing bad. It's not just the missing Lois Lerner emails, although this week the IRS came out and said, oh, you know, we found 30,000 of her emails. Oh, so the people that went to Congress and said they were irretrievably lost, were they lying to Congress? I mean, this thing is, from my standpoint, I think the whole system is out of control and corrupt.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And I don't know what the solution is, but I know that Kent is asking people to write to Congress. I think that's a valid request. And I think the system is out of control. It's damaging people. It's damaging the economy. It's taking away the businesses that people have worked to build over their life. And it's corrupt. So they're saying here, I think in the article, it referenced the Institute for Justice, which is a public interest law firm that's out there trying to reform these civil forfeiture practices, said that in 2012, the IRS made 639 such seizures around the country. That compared to 114 in 2005. But only 1 in 5 was ever prosecuted as a criminal structuring case. So it's gotten, the article goes on, the practices swept up dairy farmers in Maryland, an Army sergeant in Virginia saving for his children's college education, and then this lady in Iowa who has a Mexican restaurant. And she's trying to keep, she's down 33,000. She operates her restaurant on cash flow and charge cards. And so she's hurting bad. She may go bankrupt because of this. But do you think, is there anybody at the government that's ever going to come by and apologize for doing this to him? So you got to remember, there was no question in Kent's case, there was never a question that he was engaged in any kind of illegal activity. But that didn't matter. And so that's why I recommended that book, 3 Felonies a Day by Harvey Silverglate. You can get it in Kindle version at Amazon or hardback or paperback version. I would highly recommend it. It's frightening what's happened with the out-of-control federal government. And Josh, I would say just between you and me, but it's not just between you and me because you're going to play this on the air. But between us, Josh, I'm very concerned about what the Obama administration is going to do with regard to all sorts of things. Now, we know, for example, I was just speaking at a conference in California last week, and the state government there, despite the fact that they cannot do it under federal law, they can't require a church to pay for abortions. California authorities, and what usually happens in California usually spreads across the country, they have enacted a state regulation requiring churches in California to pay for abortions or pay for the insurance that provides abortions for their employees. That is contrary to their religious beliefs, their statement, and their statements of faith. But the California government doesn't care. And so I'm very concerned with the direction that this is going. We don't really live in quite the free country that we like to believe that we live in, or that our parents lived in, or that I lived in growing up in the 50s and 60s. It's changed dramatically. It's very troubling. So anyway, that's sort of a thumbnail. Doesn't sound like a thumbnail to you, but that's the lawyer thumbnail of kind of what's going on in this area.
Wow. So what about these the new charges that they're trying to bring on them? They're saying stuff about mail fraud and all this stuff. What's going on with that?
Well, I'd have to look into that more to see. It's not unusual for the federal government to have new charges against some people that they seem to want to keep in prison. So I'm not sure why they have this desire to keep Mr. Hovind. I mean, look. So let's look at what he did. Okay, let's take his word for it. They were taking this money out, and I think they were doing something for children or their ministry or something like that, right? They were using the cash.
Right.
At least for a time, they were using cash to do this. Who was harmed by this? There's no victim. This is solely a government power, police state type thing that they're trying to do to control people. I mean, look, folks, Josh, I have a good friend who's written about this extensively. He's pretty expert in the Agenda 21 area. I don't know if you've ever done any shows or programs on that, but his name is Patrick Wood. I'm confident that if you contacted Patrick Wood, who's been writing and speaking about this for years, a lot of this is coming. Just wait until everybody has a smart meter, and they start regulating that. That'll add. It'll be 4.5 felonies a day, and it'll be every homeowner in America. If you're, it's the growth of the state, and it's not. It doesn't seem to have any brakes on it. I'm not optimistic that the last election is going to result in any big changes.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Because we've kind of got to this stage. It's a bipartisan issue. It's government out of control. In some respects, Josh, because we met at a prophecy conference a couple weeks ago, and I think you interviewed some of my colleagues in connection with the prophecy forum. I was having severe computer problems that day. My computer actually crashed, and I had to pick it up right when we had just gone through the intro, and I had to leave. But this is it's a problem. I mean. But I think this is part of prophecy. I mean, we know that there's someone coming who's going to institute some pretty severe regulations, by which you won't be able to buy or sell unless you have a certain mark. Now, exactly what that is, we don't know. How that will play out, we don't know. But I'm just saying is all of these systems and structures are set up so that will be instituted very easily. And it will be pitched, and everybody will accept it at the time because it's a good idea. And I'm concerned about that. And I think this is where it's headed. I don't know that it can be turned around at this point. But I think people need to be aware that in free America, there are people out there losing money in their businesses just because they're choosing for whatever reason to deposit less than $10,000 in cash.
Wow.
It's and if they were depositing over 10,000 in cash every day or twice a day, they'd still be subject to a claim of So it's sort of what's the classic? It's damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Yeah.
You're stuck, especially if you have a business that engages in cash transactions. So, and to get the money back, people, you may have to spend 3/4 or more of the money even if you're successful, to get it back. It's a horrible system, and Congress should change the law.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, and I'm right behind you with that. Is there anything that people can do to protect themselves, or is it just this is just how it is, and we gotta just kind of deal with it the best we can? Like, what can people do?
Move to Costa Rica. I don't know. It's very difficult because if a professional advises you, the problem is I don't know that a lot of professionals are reluctant to get involved in advising people here, because if I advise someone to deposit $9,000 every time they got $9,000 to avoid the $10,000 reporting requirement, I would be subject, I think, probably to criminal structuring charges.
Right.
Even though the business is totally legitimate and that type of thing, and these people may have been in business for 20, 30, or 40 years operating the same way. Now all of a sudden what they're doing is criminal. I think one of the people in the New York Times article was a guy who'd been in business for a long time, and he did the things the same way because his bank told him to do it this way, but then the bank got bought by a bigger bank, which is happening all over. And that bank saw how he was depositing money, and they reported him, and now all of a sudden he's been subject to having, several $100,000. Well, here it is. The government seized $447,000 from his business, and he's trying to get it back. So it's a difficult problem. So the civil side of this, the civil forfeiture side, is bad enough, but it gets really bad because look at here, Ken Hovind's been in prison for 8.5 years. What I'm going to ask the question: his business was legit. He did this for a while, and then he stopped doing it, but yet they still convicted him of a crime. He wasn't even doing it. No one was harmed by it. And what good has been accomplished? Now, my understanding is Kent's been sharing the gospel a lot in prison, and hundreds of men have come to know the Lord. So Kent has sort of, I guess you would say, at least this is what friends of his have told me, he's redeemed the time, so to speak. Right. But really, what's been accomplished? What's been accomplished? Some prosecutor has a notch on his belt that he convicted some guy of doing something that had been a legitimate business practice of businesses for years. They were trying to catch drug dealers in the mafia, organized crime. And so what happened? A guy who has a ministry that talks about creation spends 8.5 years in jail. That's a wonderful system. It's accomplished nothing. It's accomplished nothing.
Yeah.
And he's been a resident at taxpayer expense, riding buses, as he said, all over the country. It didn't accomplish anything.
Yeah, it's just it's just more money that we all have to pay because we know that he's not the only one that's ever had to deal with this. There's plenty of people, and we all have to pay for it, and the government's getting more rich off of it, I guess. But it really seems like if there wasn't a better time to get right with God for people who might be afraid of this kind of stuff, or because really you're not going to find any hope in the legal system. That's out the window. So what else is there? I mean, we really got to find our hope in God and repent. And I'm really glad that Kent has already had that, and that he is making the best of a horrible situation. But this is stuff that the church has been having to deal with for 2,000 years. Wrongful imprisonments.
Yeah, the other aspect of the Hovind case with which I'm familiar is that they swept his wife up in this too, and she spent time in prison as well. That's just egregious to me.
Wow.
It's just, just sort of look around at what's going on right now with an administration that is fueling, I think, by its conduct, by the way they responded to it, by the statements that they've made, is throwing fuel on the fire of the riots that are going on in Ferguson, Missouri right now. As we tape this, a president who went to Cairo, Egypt in June of 2009 and gave a speech, which I think everyone should go back and listen to Barack Obama's speech that he gave at Al-Azhar University, the leading Sunni Islamic religionist institution on the planet, in July of June 4th of 2009. That speech was that, in my opinion, was the spark that eventually led to the Arab Spring and now resulted in a thing called the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq that's just engaged in acts of unspeakable brutality. So those guys get away with it. Ken Hovind teaches the gospel, teaches the biblical account of creation, and he goes to prison. There's something very, very mixed up in the world. I talk about this a lot, Josh, in my prophecy updates that I do each week. I think I mentioned it at the conference that you were at in Dublin, Ohio a couple weeks ago, or a week and a half ago. And one of the characteristics of the last days is increasing massive deception. Romans 1 describes it as people who will lose the ability to reason because of their lifestyle. Other places talk about the deception, a great world leader coming that is a deceiver without equal in the history of mankind. Jesus warned about deception in the church and in religion in the end times. And so this deception grows and it becomes massive on all these different levels. And if I challenge anyone to make the case that we are not observing that happening right in front of our eyes, because I know you look at things from talking to you. I look at things, good Christian people look at things and they just say, what is going on?
Yeah.
Well, this is really, I think, what the Bible prophesied, that this massive deception would overtake the world it would be cultural, it would be political, it would be religious, geopolitical, all those different areas. People would be deceived and the deception would grow because God sort of holds this stuff back. But in the end, he's going to say, okay, you want that? I'm going to let you have everything you want. Mm-hmm. And you see it. Things to a true believer, it's very disconcerting at times. You just say, like, what is going on? Things don't make any sense. And they don't, because that's the time in which we live. And so you should be optimistic that it's occurring, because that means things are getting closer to the end. I don't know how else to say. So don't despair, but make sure you're grounded in the truth, but be aware that it's coming, and find people that are paying attention, good teachers. And there's a lot of good guys out there that are warning people about what's coming. But I just think we're just seeing the beginning of it. If that's possible, it's going to get worse. It doesn't seem possible, but it will. It'll continue to get worse and worse, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Just like you said in your presentation at the conference, it's exponentially growing.
That's right. So you did listen. Yeah, I did. I used that example of the water growing, putting drops of water in Yankee Stadium and starting with one drop of water and doubling it every minute. You can fill the stadium up in 50 minutes, less than 50 minutes. So that's exponential growth. That's another example I use is folding let's assume you can fold a piece of paper an infinite number of times. By the time, it's just a standard paper thickness. By the time you've folded that 25 times, you are up to about the height of the Empire State Building.
Wow.
And when you get up to around 40 folds, 45 folds, in 2 folds, you will go to the distance from the Earth to the Moon. And then the next fold gets you all the way back. So that's exponential growth. That's how a good chart to look at for exponential growth would be the growth of the U.S. debt, U.S. Government debt. That's exponential growth.
Wow.
And it's frightening when it happens. It would be great if your interest allows you to grow your account that way, but now when you get 0% or just a little bit more than that on checking accounts and savings accounts and certificates of deposit, you don't get that kind of growth. But it's troubling. I mean, and these things, these affect real average everyday people. I mean, Kent Hovind is no criminal mastermind. Come on. This lady that owns a Mexican restaurant in Iowa, or the guy that has the, sort of cigarette and novelties distribution business in New York that's getting money, $400 and some $1,000. These aren't criminal masterminds. I mean, here's one more example. This is a guy who's an Army sergeant, and he didn't trust the banks, so he stored cash. But he's saving money for his kids' college. So whenever he got so much, he would, close to $10,000, he would take it and deposit it in the bank. So the government seized $66,000. Okay. The government eventually settled, but it cost him $21,000 to get the thing settled and resolved. So as a result, now $21,000 is in the hands of the government, but he was going to use that to pay for his daughter's education. So now they've had to delay that they're going to college by each of them by a year because the family lost $21,000. I mean, what good was accomplished by that?
Right.
I mean, you can report and say, well, the government had the legal right to do it because Congress enacted the law, but why does anybody ever ask why did they enact the law? And why, after seeing these incidents, why isn't the Congress called back and said, we got to put a stop to this? Yeah. I mean, does that ever happen? Either party, so a pox on both of their houses that this hasn't been done.
Wow.
I don't understand it.
How did it get this bad? Like, how is this allowed to happen? How are, I wasn't even, before really trying to look into this case, I was not even aware of half of, I mean, obviously, I think generally people probably know that the government's corrupt, at least on a certain level, but why is it that, most people don't realize how deep this actually gets? I mean, it took me actually just looking into this one case for my eyes to kind of be opened on a lot of this stuff.
Sure.
How did it get so bad? Like, what?
Well, you know the old saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So the good intentions were, let's go after the drug dealers. Mm-hmm. But once governments saw that they could fund more massive government operations without taxing people directly. I mean, look, ultimately, Josh, what this is a taxation without due process, a taxation without representation. This is the way for the government to get more money than it's entitled to get through the tax system, through property taxes, through income taxes. And so the government they see this as a way to fund yet more massive operations, and they don't have to go to people and expend political capital to tax them more and more. They just do it in sort of this surreptitious, hidden way. So they get the money they want. They get away with it for a while. They're still getting, even though it's starting to come to light, they're still getting away with it.
Right.
So do you think they're going to stop until the law changes? No. It started with good intentions, but then the government said, well, you know what? We can go after everybody on this. People who like to engage in cash transactions. So, if you're going in and you're withdrawing money from your bank because you don't trust the bank, you're at risk to have your money seized. The money that you worked for and saved. The government's going to take it. You think they're going to do with it things that's going to benefit you with it? They're going to benefit the look. There's a map out there of the most affluent counties in America. Okay. Of the top 15, I think it is, 13 are in the area around Washington, D.C. Well, what's that tell you? Seriously, what does that tell you? The government is taking the money for themselves.
Yeah. It's
counterproductive. It's, look, I'm a good, solid conservative politically and economically, and I don't know. I think the system is out of control.
Absolutely.
So I've seen it up close. I've seen it with people, and look at what they did to Ken Hovind, a guy who wasn't, look, you may disagree with his theological position, what he teaches from, I'm sure they're evolutionists that Ken Hovind makes their head explode, but our system says that's okay. We have freedom of religion.
Right.
Or do we? Because he can be put in jail for this. It's cost his ministry. I would be willing to bet hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So things could have done with the ministry to get the word out. And he had I enjoyed listening to him. And what's been accomplished? Nothing. Other than the government got money and we had to pay to have him in prison for going on 9 years now.
Yeah.
So don't get me started. I'll start ranting.
Well, this show is all about ranting because they have me as a host. So
I know. I can just imagine what goes on. No, I'm just kidding. Look, I appreciate what you do, and the answer is you got to get to what Ken suggested. You need to get to your Congress people and get the law changed, because that's the only way to do it. Even when the government gets caught, if you read this New York Times article, what they said, okay, well, we'll change our policy for the future, but all the people that we've raked over the coals and got money from in the past, forget about that.
Yeah.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Type thing in The Wizard of Oz. So it's very troubling what I see happening, very troubling. And this is just one more aspect of a whole host of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree. And, I really appreciate what you do, too. And I want to thank you so much for coming on and helping us kind of get our head around this thing. If people want to know more about you or what you do, where can they go?
Sure. Well, I teach at the Fellowship Bible Chapel in the Columbus, Ohio area. Our website is fbchapel.com for Fellowship Bible Chapel, fbchapel.com. We also post our teachings on a YouTube channel under FB. You just type in FB Chapel and my name, John Haller, and those should come right up. You can see all the video teachings that we've been posting there since we started the church about a year and a half ago. We also have started live streaming our services on livestream.com. And if you do a search, we started live streaming. We sponsored a conference, Columbus Bible Prophecy Conference, it's called. So if you go to Google and type in Prophecy Conference, our Facebook page should pop up in the first 4 or 5 results, I think, usually within the top 2. Although I don't know how Google operates. It's like they always know where you are when you type in the search. So when I do it here, I get it. It's the second search result, our Facebook page. So we post stuff on Facebook page, links to our teachings, live stream. Just search under Columbus Bible Prophecy Conference. And then we also have FB Chapel and our name there on our event page. So we live stream our messages, our sermon during our worship hour about 9:45 a.m. Eastern Time on Sunday mornings, and then I usually start teaching, usually a prophecy update or prophecy-related teaching about 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings. So that's how people can find us. And also I'm a member of the Prophecy Forum, the prophecyforum.com. We just did a conference in Dublin. You can still get a ticket to watch the live stream archive of the main hall sessions, and then we also are in the process of making up DVDs. It's going to take us, a month and a half or so to do DVDs. But right now, if you go to the prophecyforum.com, there'll be a link. You can get I think a discount price for the DVD set of all the sessions, both that we had in the main hall and in the little theater, including, I think, a panel that you were on.
Yeah.
I think you guys did a panel. What was it on? Was it transhumanism or supernatural or something?
Ours was spiritual warfare in America.
Spiritual warfare. Okay. So I know you were on one of the panels, and I was busy. I didn't get to see that, so I'm looking forward to getting the DVDs and taking a look at what happened there. So one of the things that was really exciting about the Prophecy Forum conference in Dublin was the number of young people, yourself included, that showed up at the conference. We were really, really pleased with that. There was that young couple that came from Oregon, drove all the way from the coast of Oregon, about 40 hours to be at the conference. I think she was 8 months pregnant, and we were really, really blessed by the outpouring of the response, both people attending live and people attending by live stream. That was, we were amazed, but we were really, really encouraged at the number of young people and young couples such as yourself and your wife that were there. It was, that was really encouraging, really encouraging.
Well, it was definitely a blessing to be there and be a part of it. It was, I think a lot of good, came out of that for a lot of people, and especially prophecy prophecy is so important.
Yeah, well, part of it too was the fellowship that you have with there are people out there that believe the same way you are, and I don't know if you know this, but a young lady that was there kind of came. She was. I thought people that believed in this were a little bit sort of in the tinfoil hat crowd, and she was struck by how normal everybody was.
Wow.
But also how they all seemed to have a glow about them, was the word she used. And Sunday afternoon before she left, she accepted the Lord. So that happens.
Praise God.
Yeah. So good things happen, and there are many, many stories like that. That I'm sure we'll be learning about in the weeks and months to come. So appreciate the time, Josh. Keep up the good work, and keep hitting these hard issues that are out there.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
mainstream media doesn't seem to want to cover them.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, and you do the same. Thank you so much.
Okay, God bless, Josh. Thank you.
Yep, God bless you too. Well, there you have it. There is so much that can be said concerning this case and those in charge. However, I will leave it at this. There is seriously something wrong in our nation, and we all need to be informed so we can do our best to prepare. As I said in the top of the show, this is not meant to frighten you. This is meant to inform you as to the current state of our country and the world. Time is ramping up, prophecy is being fulfilled, and we all need to do our part to take care of ourselves and each other. I have scheduled time to speak with Dr. Hovind again, so I will have that posted as well as soon as possible. Now, all of that being said, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. You have been listening to The Sharpening, and I am your host, Josh Peck. As always, take care, and God bless.